Hello everyone, welcome to Edutap and welcome to the Finance 360-degree sessions where we cover all the relevant and important finance current affairs and the RBI notifications which are important from your exam point of view. And in today's session, we are going to cover a very important notification that has been released by the Reserve Bank of India. That is the Master Directions has been released by the Reserve Bank of India for the internal ombudsman. Okay, so why the RBI has released these Master Directions? What are the details that have been provided in the master directions? What do you have to understand from these master directions? So all of this we are going to cover in today's session. So do not worry. Today we are going to have the complete clarity regarding the internal ombudsman mechanism. So welcome all of you. And do tell me that I am clearly audible and visible. Am I clearly audible and visible? So good morning Pratul. Good morning Sahaj. Good morning Amrit. So let's get started with today's session, okay? So before that, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our Telegram channel for the PDF of this session. You will get the PDF of this session in the Telegram channel. The link for the Telegram channel is provided in the description box below. Okay, so do tell me that I am clearly audible and visible. So now Master Direction has been released by the Reserve Bank of India for the internal ombudsman for the regulated entities that are regulated under the Reserve Bank of India. Let it be the banks, the NBFCs, the credit information companies and such. So these are the directions that have been released by the Reserve Bank of India in 2023. So RBI has issued the master direction to harmonize. So this internal ombudsman master direction has been released to harmonize the instructions that are applicable to various regulated entities on the internal ombudsman mechanism. So see, there are various regulated entities. Let it be the banks, the NBFCs, and the credit information companies. Okay, so they are maintaining the internal ombudsman. Now they all are maintaining various regulated entities. They are maintaining the internal ombudsman, but the internal ombudsman that they are maintaining, there are different norms that they are following. That means the timeline to hire the internal ombudsman, the timeline of the internal ombudsman resolving the complaints, seeing the complaints, okay, the members that are in the internal ombudsman, the criteria to select the internal ombudsman. So they are different between different regulated entities. Okay, so it has been decided that to harmonize the instructions that are applicable regarding the internal ombudsman on all the regulated entities, that regulations should be harmonized, that regulation should be similar for all the regulated entities. Okay, they should not be following whatever they want to follow. Okay, they should have the written norms and regulations that they should be following for the internal ombudsman. Okay, that we are going to understand that what are these norms and everything. Okay, so now it's not like that all the banks have to follow the internal ombudsman. It's not like that all the NBFCs have to follow the internal ombudsman. So which are those NBFCs, which are those banks that have to follow the internal ombudsman, that have to have an internal ombudsman? And what is this internal ombudsman? All of this we are going to understand in today's session. So let's understand internal ombudsman first of all. So internal ombudsman, Reserve Bank of India had in May 2015 advised all the public sector banks and selected private and foreign banks to appoint internal ombudsman as an independent authority. So internal ombudsman should be an independent authority that is hired by the regulated entity to review the complaints. So internal ombudsman will review the complaints that were partially or wholly rejected by the respective banks. So if you have any complaint regarding a bank, the services that the bank is providing, so you will go to the bank to raise your complaint regarding the bank. You will go to the manager, you will raise your complaint regarding the bank. So bank has to resolve that complaint. Let's say the bank is rejecting your complaint. The bank is rejecting your complaint. In the case of rejection of your complaint, now you are not satisfied that why my complaint is being rejected. I have a valid point that I am not getting the services. So I should be told that why I am not getting the services and I should be provided with the services. So you have a valid complaint, but that has been rejected by the bank. Bank has rejected your complaint. Now what will you do? You will go to the Reserve Bank of India to complain under the integrate. So there is the integrated ombudsman scheme of the Reserve Bank of India, where there is the Reserve Bank of India that handles this integrated ombudsman scheme. Through this scheme, you can raise your complaint with the RBI and you can resolve your complaint. But RBI said that why the customers directly have to come to us, come to RBI. There should be another mechanism to resolve the complaints of the customers. So RBI said that all the banks, all the public sector and select private and foreign banks, they have to appoint the integrated ombudsman as an independent authority that will review the complaints, only those complaints that were partially or wholly rejected by the respective banks. If the banks are resolving the complaint, very good. If they are rejecting the complaint, first this complaint, the customers can raise this complaint within the bank. There is the internal ombudsman, that is an independent authority that is present in the bank. So with the internal ombudsman, the complaint can be raised. So review the complaints. So the internal ombudsman will review the complaint that were partially or wholly rejected by the respective banks. So the integrated ombudsman mechanism was set up with a view to strengthen the internal grievance redressal of the banks, because integrated ombudsman scheme of the Reserve Bank of India. So there is the internal ombudsman scheme that is with the banks, that is the internal grievance redressal mechanism. The grievance of the customers have to be resolved internally by the banks, by the NBFCs. Then there is the integrated ombudsman scheme of the Reserve Bank of India, that is the alternate grievance redressal mechanism. So internal grievance redressal mechanism, internal is within the banks, within the regulated entities. Okay, so this is the internal grievance redressal mechanism, that is through the banks, they are resolving the complaints of the customers, or through the internal ombudsman, they are resolving the complaints of the customer, which are wholly or partially rejected by the respective banks. Okay, so to strengthen the internal grievance redressal system of the banks and to ensure that the complaints of the customers are redressed at the level of the bank itself by an authority that is placed at the highest level of the bank's grievance redressal mechanism, so as to minimize the need for the customers to go outside to go to the alternate grievance redressal mechanism. So this is the idea. Have you understood about the internal ombudsman? Any confusion regarding the internal ombudsman? Clear? Or do you have confusion? Any other queries I will take by the end of the session. If you have any confusion regarding the concept right now, that you share. Okay. So now this was the internal ombudsman. Now the scheme regarding the internal ombudsman scheme, this was released for the scheduled commercial banks in 2018. Slowly the internal ombudsman idea was spread for the NBFCs also. For selected NBFCs, they have to follow the internal ombudsman. The credit information companies, they had to follow the internal ombudsman. Year after year, there were different regulations that were released. But now on statement on developmental and regulatory policies. In this document that was released in October 6, 2023, RBI, so this is the document that RBI releases with the monetary policy statement. So in this document, the RBI has released the norms for the consumer protection. Okay, the norms, like the idea for the consumer protection. Under this idea, under the consumer protection, the RBI promised that a master direction on the internal ombudsman mechanism will be released for the regulated entities. Okay. So RBI in 2015 introduced an internal ombudsman mechanism in select scheduled commercial banks with the objective to strengthen their internal grievance redressal system. To ensure efficient and fair resolution of the customer complaints, the fair and efficient resolution should happen of the customer complaints by enabling an apex level review through the internal ombudsman within the banks before they are finally rejected. So if a bank is rejecting the complaint, that should go to the internal ombudsman for review. And if the internal ombudsman rejects it, that has to be finally, right, that is rejected. That is a vague kind of complaint, or that is not at all appropriate kind of complaint, that can be raised. But if internal ombudsman is saying that, okay, you cannot reject this complaint should be seen by the bank. So that complaint will have to be seen, like then there will be a process that will happen. Okay. So this is the idea. Now, gradually what happened that the framework has been extended to other regulated entities like the NBFCs. I have told you that selected NBFCs, they also had to follow the internal ombudsman. The credit information companies, they also had to follow the internal ombudsman. All credit information companies had to follow the internal ombudsman. It was also for select non-bank system participants, that is non-bank issuers of PPIs. PPIs, prepaid payment instruments like wallet. You have already filled your wallet, the Paytm wallet or the Amazon Pay wallet, you have filled your wallet. You can use this wallet. So this is the prepaid payment instrument. You have already paid and you have already kept the money in the wallet through your account. You have sent the money to the wallet, then you are spending through the wallet. So Amazon Pay, PayU, Razorpay, the Paytm, all of these, like majorly Amazon Pay, PayU, Razorpay, all of these, they are the non-bank system participants that are the issuers of the PPIs and such. Okay. So for these also, the framework was extended of the internal ombudsman. Now the guidelines on internal ombudsman framework currently in operation for various categories of regulated entities. The banks, selected banks, they are following the internal ombudsman. They also have to keep the internal ombudsman. Select NBFCs have to keep the internal ombudsman. All the credit information companies have to keep the internal ombudsman. Non-bank system participants have to keep the internal ombudsman. Selected non-bank system participants. So various categories of the regulated entities, they are following the internal ombudsman. They have similar design feature that, okay, internal ombudsman will review the rejected complaints that are rejected by the bank. So they have similar design feature, but they carry certain variations on operational matters. That the internal ombudsman, what will be the criteria to select the internal ombudsman, how it will work, within how many days it will work, how many internal ombudsmen the bank can keep. So there are certain variations that are happening on the operational matters. Different regulated entities are having different operational ways of the internal ombudsman. Okay, so it has been said, based on the learnings from the implementation of the existing internal ombudsman guidelines, it has been decided to harmonize the same and issue a consolidated master direction. That means we have to harmonize the guidelines regarding the internal ombudsman so that all the regulated entities, they have the same basis of the internal ombudsman, and the internal ombudsman is working in all the regulated entities. Internal ombudsman is working in a clear manner. Okay. Now, after understanding the background, let's move to the final guidelines that are released by the Reserve Bank of India. So first of all, in exercise of the powers that are conferred by the Banking Regulation Act, that's why these guidelines are for the banks, these guidelines are for the credit information companies, these guidelines are also for the non-banking system participants, and these guidelines are under the Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934 also. So that's why these guidelines are released under these sections. In exercise of the powers that are conferred by these particular acts, the Reserve Bank of India, being satisfied that it is necessary in the public interest to do so, has released the master direction for the internal ombudsman for the regulated entities. These directions are issued with a view to strengthen the internal grievance redressal mechanism of the regulated entities and ensure proper and the speedy resolution of the customer complaints by enabling a review before they are finally rejected by the bank, okay, by an apex level authority within the regulated entity before they are finally rejected. Okay, so these directions integrate and update the current internal, so there are current different internal ombudsman schemes. Internal ombudsman schemes for the banks, for the non-banking financial companies, for the non-bank system participants, for the credit information companies. So they all have been integrated, they all have been updated, and there is the complete master direction that has been released for internal ombudsman for all the regulated entities. Okay. Now, applicability. I have told you that this guidelines, the master direction or the internal ombudsman, this is not for all the banks or the NBFCs. So which banks have to follow the internal ombudsman? Which banks have to hire which NBFCs have to hire the internal ombudsman? Which non-bank system participants have to hire the internal ombudsman. So let's see the applicability in the RBI Grade B 2023 exam. There was a direct question on the applicability, and the applicability is very important from the exam point of view. So banks having 10 or more banking outlets in India, okay, whether they are foreign banks, whether they are Indian banks, if they have 10 or more banking outlets in India, they have to follow the master direction of the internal ombudsman. They have to hire an internal ombudsman. NBFCs that are fulfilling the criteria, that is, if they are the deposit taking NBFCs, that means they are taking the deposit of the public and have 10 or more branches, they have to keep an internal ombudsman. Non-deposit taking NBFC that are not taking the deposit of the people, but they have a public customer interface and their asset size is of rupees 5,000 crore and above, then they have to keep the internal ombudsman. All the non-banking system participants, the Amazon Pay, the Paytm and such, with more than 1 crore prepaid payment instruments outstanding. Okay, more than 1 crore prepaid payment instruments outstanding as on March 31st, 2023 or thereafter. They also have to follow the they also have to have the internal ombudsman. They have to follow the master direction. However, the scheme shall continue to be applicable even if, like, after the March 31st 2023, after this their prepaid instruments must have decreased. Let's say it has become 99 lakh rather than 1 crore. Then also 9 lakh 99, yes, 99. So even if it has decreased, however, the scheme shall continue to be applicable even if the number of the prepaid payment instruments outstanding falls below the threshold at a later date. Okay, still they will have to follow the internal ombudsman and the master direction. This is important from the objective point of view. This is important from the descriptive point of view also. Okay, all credit. Now for the credit information companies, there is no criteria. All the credit information companies have to follow this master direction. Okay, any regulated entity that is subsequent to the issue of these directions reaching the threshold. So let's say there was a non-banking system participant that didn't have the 1 crore prepaid instruments, but now after March 2024 they have got the 1 crore of the prepaid instruments outstanding. Then they will also have to start following the master directions. They also have to start having the internal ombudsman. Okay, would be required to put in place an internal ombudsman framework within 6 months of reaching the threshold. So they will get 6 months. So a bank that had less than 10 branches, in India, now if it is having like 10 branches or more than 10 branches, then it will have to start having the internal ombudsman framework within 6 months reaching the threshold. The Reserve Bank, if it is satisfied in public interest, it can add further entities also under the internal ombudsman framework. Okay, Office of the Internal Ombudsman. So the Internal Ombudsman shall either be a retired or serving officer in the rank that is equivalent to a general management in any other bank. So it's not like that you have served in a bank and then you are working as an internal ombudsman in the same bank. That cannot happen. If you have worked in an entity, in an NBFC, you cannot work as an internal ombudsman in the same entity. Okay. So in any of the entities, you must have worked as a general manager, having necessary skills and experience of minimum 7 years. Remember the minimum 7 years. You know that how many of the questions are coming in the phase 1, in the phase 2 that are statement based. Okay, so you have to remember this. Minimum 7 years of working in areas such as banking, non-banking, finance, regulation, supervision and such. Internal Ombudsman shall previously not have been employed nor presently be employed in the same regulated entity where he is or she is going to work as an internal ombudsman. The internal ombudsman shall not be over 70 years of age before the completion of the tenure. So if the person has a tenure of 5 years, before the completion of the tenure, he must not be 70 years. Okay. So that means at 60, at 65, after the 65 years of age, the person cannot be hired if the person has a tenure of 5 years, or the person can have the tenure of 3 years. If the person is 65, then for 3 years, yes, he can work. Regulated entity may appoint more than one internal ombudsman depending on the volume of the complaints that the bank is or NBFC is receiving. Okay, because SBI is a big bank, it has multiple branches, so it is receiving a lot of complaints, so it can hire more than one internal ombudsman to ensure the continuity of the operation. In such cases where there are more than one internal ombudsman, the regulated entity may clearly define the jurisdiction of each internal ombudsman also. Now there can be a deputy internal ombudsman also, like you have an internal ombudsman, then the deputy internal ombudsman can also be hired. One or more deputy internal ombudsman can be hired depending on the volume of the complaints that are being received by the internal ombudsman. And deputy internal ombudsman should be having at least a deputy manager, general manager office in any of the important institutions, in any of such institutions, and should not have been previously hired by the same bank and same. So such regulations will follow for the deputy internal ombudsman also. In the temporary absence of the internal ombudsman, then the deputy internal ombudsman can work as an internal ombudsman, but the temporary absence of the internal ombudsman should not be more than 15 working days. Okay. The tenure, and the deputy internal ombudsman can function as an internal ombudsman for limited purpose of reviewing the rejected complaints. The tenure of the internal ombudsman or deputy internal ombudsman in the regulated entity shall be a fixed term of not less than 3 years but not exceeding 5 years. Okay, so remember this, that the tenure of internal ombudsman and deputy internal ombudsman shall be a fixed term of not less than 3 years and not more than 5 years. The internal ombudsman and deputy shall not be eligible for reappointment or for extension of term in the same regulated entity. The tenure of these shall be indicated in the appointment letter. The internal ombudsman and deputy cannot be removed before the completion of his or her tenure without the permission of Reserve Bank of India. So if a bank has to remove the internal ombudsman, they have to take the permission from the Reserve Bank of India. In case of vacancy that arises, that something has happened to the internal ombudsman, some kind of resignation or terminal illness or any kind of problem that has happened with the internal ombudsman and he is resigning, he is leaving the office, then this should be informed to the RBI within 10 working days. Appointment should happen within 3 months and after the appointment, the submission of report should happen within 5 working days to the Reserve Bank of India. So this is the timeline. You can understand that how systematic it has become, that all the regulated entities that have to follow, that have to keep the internal ombudsman, they have to follow these guidelines. Roles and responsibilities of the internal ombudsman. The internal ombudsman shall not handle any complaints directly from the customer. If the complaint is coming directly from the customer, the bank will handle that. If the bank has rejected the complaint, then the complaint will go to the internal ombudsman. So have been partly. If the bank has partly or wholly rejected the complaint, then it will go to the internal ombudsman. So which of the following types of the complaints shall be outside the purview of these directions? That means they will not come under the internal ombudsman. They will not be handled by the internal ombudsman. So if any complaint is arising related to corporate fraud, this is not related to customer. Customer should not care about this. So internal ombudsman should not handle this. Misappropriation, except those resulting from deficiency, like only the internal ombudsman will handle the complaints that is regarding deficiency in services and such. References in the nature, if any suggestion has been given by the customers, if any commercial decisions regarding this, any suggestion has been given and such, so this should not be handled by internal ombudsman. This is as per the bank, they want to accept it or not. Service deficiencies, if any service deficiency in case of falling under commercial decisions, that the bank is advertising something, then it can go under the internal ombudsman. So if it is related to the services that is provided to the customer, then it can go to the internal ombudsman. Complaints or references related to internal administration, this cannot go to internal ombudsman, should not be handled by the internal ombudsman. Human resources, some person is not working well, this should not go under internal ombudsman. Pay or amendments, that the staff is not getting the fair wage, so they should not go under the internal ombudsman. If it is complaints which have been decided by or are already pending in other forum, such as the consumer disputes redressal commission, courts, etc., they should not go to the internal ombudsman. Disputes for which remedy has been provided under the Credit Information Companies Act, so for this also the complaint should not go to the internal ombudsman. The internal ombudsman shall analyze the pattern of the customer's complaints. Okay, what is the pattern of complaints? If for a particular product, let's say for loans, there are many complaints that are coming, that means there is some problem with the car loans. Either we are making some terms and conditions very harsh or some problem is coming in the car loans. So pattern of the complaints have to be analyzed, such as the product wise or the category wise, consumer group wise, that from these consumers, from the farmers, they are the consumer group, from these consumers a lot of complaints are coming. That means bank must be doing something wrong. We should inform the bank, we should address the root cause of these similar complaints or repeated complaints that are coming, and those that require policy level changes in the regulated entity. So this is also the role and responsibility of internal ombudsman. Internal ombudsman shall furnish periodic reports, have to provide the periodic reports regarding their activities, his or her activities, to the committee of the board. So there is one internal ombudsman, or there can be 2 or 3 internal ombudsmans, as per, like there can be 2 internal ombudsmans. So they have to provide the periodic report to the committee of the board that is handling the customer service and protection. Committee of the board of the bank that is handling the customer service and protection, preferably at the quarterly intervals, but not less than half yearly interval. That means within 3 months they should provide these periodic reports, if not 3 months, at least within 6 months. Okay. Regulated entities shall ensure to put in place a system for discussion of cases. Let's say that the internal ombudsman has taken the decision that this complaint should not be rejected, but the regulated entity is still rejecting this complaint. Then what? So regulated entities shall put in place a system for discussion of cases. Such cases have to be discussed in which the decision of the internal ombudsman has been rejected by the regulated entity. That the internal ombudsman has said that this complaint that has been wholly rejected, this complaint should not be rejected, but the regulated entity is saying no, we are going to reject this complaint anyhow. Then these such kind of cases have to be discussed by the customer service committee or consumer protection committee of the board of the regulated entity. Okay, the internal ombudsman shall be designated as an ex officio member or the permanent invitee of the committee of the board, that is of the committee of the board that is handling the customer service and protection. Okay, so now this is the end of the session, so we are towards the end, thankfully. So I hope you have understood till now very clearly. Any confusion you can share. So this is just the regulatory and supervisory oversight by the Reserve Bank, the areas relating to customer service and the customer grievance redressal, as well as the implementation of these directions, okay, shall be part. So if the areas that is related to customer service or customer grievance redressal, as well as the implementation of the master direction that has been released by the Reserve Bank of India, there shall be a part of risk assessment and supervisory review that should be taken. So if the regulated entities, if the banks, eligible NBFCs, they are following the guidelines or they are not following the guidelines. So this has to be looked after by the Department of Supervision of the Reserve Bank in case the regulated entity is a bank, NBFC and a credit information company. Okay, so if master direction is being followed or not, this has to be looked after by the Department of Supervision in case it is a bank, NBFC or CIC. And the Department of Payment and Settlement System of the Reserve Bank of India in case the regulated entity is non-banking system participant, because the non-banking system participants, they fall under payment and settlement system. Consumer Education and Protection Department of the Reserve Bank of India, they have to review the cases where the decision of the internal ombudsman has not been accepted by the regulated entity. So it's not like that only if the decision of the internal ombudsman has been rejected, only the internal boards will see that what is the problem, that why the internal ombudsman decision has been rejected. It is also going to be the Consumer Education and Protection Department of the RBI that is going to look that why the decision of the internal ombudsman has been where the decision of the internal ombudsman has not been accepted and why it has been rejected by the regulated entity, and the aggrieved complaint approaches to the Reserve Bank of India ombudsman. Okay, so in case the internal ombudsman decision has been rejected, okay, and the person that has raised the complaint is reaching to the integrated internal ombudsman, that is the Reserve Bank of India, then the Consumer Education and Protection Department will review that complaint. You can understand that the RBI cannot review all the rejections that has happened for the all the internal ombudsman decisions that have been rejected. The RBI cannot look after all the complaints that have all the decisions that have been rejected for the internal ombudsman. Okay, so all the decisions that have been rejected by the internal ombudsman, all the decisions of the internal ombudsman that have been rejected, the customer service committee or consumer protection committee of the board have to look after those decisions, discuss the cases. It is the Consumer Education and Protection Department of the Reserve Bank that may review the cases where the decision of the internal ombudsman has been rejected by the regulated entity, and the aggrieved complainant, the consumer has approached the RBI that if the internal ombudsman said internal ombudsman decision is also not being followed, my complaint should have been reviewed by the bank, should have been resolved by the bank, but bank has rejected it. Internal ombudsman said that the complaint should be accepted, but the internal ombudsman decision has been rejected. Now the complainant M is going to the RBI. Then the Consumer Education and Protection Department can review the cases for assessing the effectiveness of the internal grievance redressal mechanism of the regulated entity and initiating corrective actions as it may seem fit. Okay, repeal of the existing schemes. So these schemes, internal ombudsman scheme of 2018 for the banks, the internal ombudsman scheme for the NB, the non-banking system participants, appointment of internal ombudsman by non-banking financial companies, Reserve Bank of India, credit information companies, internal ombudsman, all of these schemes have been repealed because a master direction has been released for all the regulated entities that have to follow the internal ombudsman scheme. Any confusion till now? ओके, हरीश इज आस्किंग, अगर बैंक के इंटरनल ऑम्बुड्समैन ने रिजेक्ट किया तो आरबीआई इंटीग्रेटेड ऑम्बुड्समैन के पास नहीं जा सकता. सी, द पर्सन एम इज रेजिंग द कंप्लेंट विद रेगुलेटेड एंटिटी ने रिजेक्ट कर दिया, रेगुलेटेड एंटिटी रिजेक्टेड इट, देन इट विल गो टू इंटरनल ऑम्बुड्समैन ने एक्सेप्ट कर लिया कि होना चाहिए, दिस कंप्लेंट शुड बी एड्रेस्ड. ओके, नाउ इफ द बैंक इज नॉट फॉलोइंग इट, बैंक स्टिल is not resolving the complaint, then the decision of the internal ombudsman has been rejected. Internal ombudsman का ही decision reject कर दिया कि नहीं accept करेंगे, regulated entity ने मना ही कर दिया accept करने से, they are not accepting it, the bank. Then the complainant M can still go to the RBI, and then the Consumer Education and Protection Department will look after it. Okay. Any other query? My RBI news tab, ma'am, there are many news that you are covering here. They will be mentioned in the the RBI news tab. In the PDF will be released. Okay, they are released in the 15-day wise, so it will be released, and in that the news will be there. Okay, do not worry. If you are following, if you have the course, just follow the documents that are provided. The schemes tab is there. Start reading the schemes, start going through the schemes, start going through the reports, start going through the current affairs. Okay, so this is the first question. I hope you will be easily able to answer this question. And this is the second question. Such kind of questions have been seen in the phase 1 and the phase 2 of the RBI Grade B. So these are also very important questions. Okay, now I have to show you the students that have given the right answer of the previous session. So Kamal Krishna, JSCO, Dinesh, Durga, Ankit, Prathwin, Saurish, Kingshuk, Kaushal, Murli, Ankush, Jadu, Ankit, Molly, User, Yogita, Abhiman, Abhay, Math ID, Sonal, Mansi, Nikhil, Jhanna, Sandeep, Hemant, Rushi, Siddharth, Prathul, Ankit, Riya, Tamiz, Satyam, Poonam, Aman, Navdeep, Ashutosh, Chandrakant, Aditya, Murli, Vandita, Ronak, Kinera, Anadi, Stuti, Shibanand, YDV, Aditi, Jagriti, and Rahul. These are the students that have given the right answers. And thank you so much for your wonderful comments. You are most welcome. Molly, you are most welcome. User, you are most welcome. Yogita, you are most welcome. Ankush, you are most welcome. Priyanka, you are most welcome. Saurish, you are most welcome. Prathwin, Ankit, and Akshay, you are most welcome. And Kamal Krishna, you are most welcome. GSK, thank you so much for your wonderful comments. They really motivate us a lot. Okay. In the Udgam portal, you get to see all the money that is like unclaimed. Unclaimed money is what? That you have not claimed for 10 years. Okay, they are going to the DA fund. Okay, the fund is in DA. The money is in DA. Okay. So here, this is it. So I hope you will be you will give the right answer of both the questions. So this is the first question. Give the right answer of this question, and this is the second question. So do give the right answer of this question. So these are the two questions, homework questions. If you have any comments, if you have any queries, you can comment down below. You can call us here. You can mail us here. Okay. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much for coming. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the session, and do like and share or